Most people think luxury in Mauritius is about 5 stars, infinity pools, and perfect beaches. But what if real luxury here has nothing to do with excess and everything to do with rhythm? I spent half a day inside Sugar Beach Hotel Mauritius, and what I discovered was not just a hotel, but a carefully constructed version of the island itself. A place where architecture slows your breathing, where light becomes part of the design, and where even silence feels intentional. The question is not whether this place is beautiful. The real question is what kind of Mauritius it allows you to see. There are places in Mauritius that feel beautiful, and then there are places that feel intentionally composed, curated in a way that makes you forget the outside world exists. Sugar Beach on the west coast is one of those places where architecture, light, and atmosphere seem designed to slow your breathing without you even realizing it. From above, especially through a drone lens, the property reveals its geometry with almost theatrical precision. Long white colonial lines facing the lagoon, palm trees positioned deliberately, symmetry opening toward the horizon as if the entire layout was built to frame the Indian Ocean itself. It does not feel chaotic. It does not feel improvised. It breathes in a structured way, and that is the first signal that this is not accidental luxury, but constructed serenity. I spent half a day there, not as a guest checking room categories or comparing amenities, but as an observer trying to understand what luxury really means on this island. Because luxury in Mauritius is not the same as luxury in many other parts of the world. In large cities, luxury often feels controlled, private, almost silent in its precision. Here, it moves with the ocean. It absorbs humidity. It reflects sunset light. It lives in open air. The West Coast carries a particular personality. The lagoon is calmer. The sunsets are warmer. The late afternoon light softens both people and buildings. And Sugar Beach seems designed to capture that softness rather than compete with it. Walking through the gardens, the first impression is space, real space, generous pathways, buildings that are not compressed against each other, a beachfront that stretches rather than crowds. Even when guests are present, the atmosphere rarely feels saturated. There is something profoundly Mauritian in that sense of breathing room. The island understands distance. It understands airflow. It understands the comfort of openness. You may notice that many of the shots feel calm, almost empty, and that is intentional. During my time there, I chose not to film the guests or the private moments happening around me. Not because the hotel lacked life, but because certain spaces deserve discretion. Luxury, especially in a place like this, is often about intimacy, about conversations that are not meant to be documented. So what you see here is the architecture, the light, the atmosphere. The human presence remains implied, respected, and undisturbed. Inside, the colonial inspiration is unmistakable. High ceilings, white and cream tones, pale wood, bright corridors that could easily feel artificial if misplaced. Yet against the backdrop of Flic and Flac's lagoon, the aesthetic feels coherent rather than decorative. This is where the more interesting question begins. What exactly defines luxury in Mauritius? Is it the scale of the pool, the imported finishes, the curated menus, or is it something more subtle? What I noticed most was rhythm. The staff do not move with the rushed precision of major metropolitan hotels. They move with an island tempo, calm but attentive, steady rather than hurried. Many visitors misinterpret that calm as inefficiency, when in reality it is part of the sensory experience. Luxury here is not speed, it is atmosphere. As the afternoon shifts toward evening, the transformation begins, not in sound, but in light. The West Coast does not explode dramatically into color every single night. Instead, it dissolves gradually into orange, then gold, then soft pink tones that reflect on the lagoon like brushed silk. From above, the hotel's symmetry becomes almost poetic against that sky. and you begin to see how architecture and geography collaborate rather than compete. When night approaches, the energy changes again, and stepping into the Buddha bar restaurant within the property feels like entering a parallel dimension. Darker, warmer, more intimate, wood textures replacing brightness. Low lighting reflecting softly off polished surfaces. Shadows intentionally sculpted to create depth rather than spectacle. And then the live music begins. And this is where the experience shifts from visual to emotional. There's a fundamental difference between background music and musicians physically present in the room. You see hands touching instruments. You feel vibrations in the air rather than through speakers. That presence changes the texture of the evening. The performance is not loud. It does not dominate conversation. It wraps around it, softening the edges of the space, creating an immersive layer that elevates dinner from simple consumption to curated sensation. The cuisine itself is refined yet approachable, another detail that reveals something about Mauritian high-end hospitality. Even at this level, it rarely feels cold or intimidating. There's warmth in interaction, a friendliness that feels organic rather than scripted. That reflects the island's long history as a crossroads of cultures. French, British, Indian, African, and Chinese influences, blending into something uniquely Mauritian. Yet what makes the experience deeper is understanding the context beyond the gates. Just outside the property walls, everyday life continues in its ordinary rhythm. Local shops, fishermen, public beaches, traffic, families, markets. That contrast is not a flaw. It is part of the island's layered identity. Luxury here does not erase reality. It coexists with it. The lagoon in front of the hotel remains calm because the barrier reef protects this coast from stronger currents. The water feels almost domesticated, gentle and predictable, reflecting the personality of the West, which many visitors find reassuring because it offers stability, softer weather patterns, smoother seas, reliable sunsets. Sugar Beach positions itself precisely within that stability. But what impressed me most was not any single element. It was coherence. Nothing feels random. From palm alignment to night lighting choices, everything seems orchestrated to maintain emotional continuity. Many luxury resorts invest heavily in decoration. Fewer invest deeply in atmosphere. Half a day is not enough to evaluate every operational detail, but it is enough to sense identity. And the identity here is not about spectacle. It does not scream exclusivity. It whispers refinement. It does not overwhelm with extravagance. It invites with balance. Mauritius is not built for dramatic spectacle. It is built for feeling, for softness, for layered contrasts. And this property seems to understand that fundamental truth. As the night deepens and the live music softens, the lagoon turns dark and reflective, lights from the property dancing quietly on the water surface. And in that moment, something subtle becomes clear. Luxury here is not about escaping reality permanently. It is about suspending it temporarily. For a few hours, you step into a curated environment where architecture, light, sound, space, and service align. And then, when you leave, Mauritius continues exactly as it was. Complex, multicultural, vibrant, ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. Places like this are not the entire story of the island, but they are undeniably a chapter of it. A chapter that shows how tropical geography, colonial heritage, and modern tourism merge into a polished interpretation of Mauritian hospitality. Whether you stay for a week or simply experience a dinner and sunset as I did, what matters is recognizing what you are truly experiencing. You are not just consuming comfort, you are witnessing how Mauritius translates its natural softness into curated luxury. And when that translation is coherent, balanced, and intentional, it feels less like excess and more like harmony.